How do you film a fight scene without people getting hurt? Most of the illusion of pain is actually created with editing tricks and sound effects. Without them, it would look like this.
So, of course, during filming for A Day Late, Corey and I were not actually hitting each other. We either sometimes punch past the face, on that side, on this side, and sometimes if it was right here, we would stop. We filmed this entire film with no crash pads, so it's good that Corey and I are both trained martial artists and we know how to fall correctly.
The cinematography and editing of A Day Late was very much inspired by the movie Mad Max Fury Road. Editing trick they used that I utilized in this film is cutting frames to make a punch look faster. What that means is, if I'm going in for a punch and there's a frame here, a frame here, and a frame here, I cut out that frame in between so that it just goes from this frame to this frame super fast. It makes the punch look a lot more intense. This is what it looks like before I cut frames, and then after. I also needed to speed up the performances every once in a while to about 110% speed or 130% speed or somewhere in between.
I actually am that fast when I'm trying to hurt somebody.
When you're trying to hurt somebody, but when you're trying to play safe, we gotta go slow.
No, I actually am that fast. He didn't do any of that post-production work.
Another trick I utilized for Mad Max Fury Road was centered framing, where every shot I would have all the action planted around the center of the frame. Otherwise, if someone's swinging a punch and in one shot it's over here and then the next shot it's over here, then your eye has to readjust between those two angles, and it takes a few frames for your eyes to readjust, which when you're cutting really fast can be very confusing. On the other hand, when we keep all the action around the center of the frame, your eye doesn't have to readjust and you're well oriented in the action. I planned my camera angles around what angle most clearly showed the action that they had choreographed. If at the beginning of a fight they started at this angle, and then as they were fighting they began to turn around like this, then I would need to cut to a camera angle from over here to show what exactly they're doing. I would also sometimes cut when someone got punched. That way, if you start at one angle and then suddenly when someone gets hit, you cut to over there, then for a second it feels like, ugh! It gives that slightly disorienting feeling that you get when you get punched. Typically, when filming a fight scene, the team will just grab a bunch of random different camera angles and then decide, we'll find it in the edit. I did not want to do that. I came on set having a certain idea in mind of when I would cut. I'm grabbing this shot thinking, okay, when he throws this punch here, I might cut to this shot here, I might cut to this shot here, but then I'm still open to changing that if I come into the editing room and find that isn't working. So I did grab a bunch of different camera angles, getting coverage, but with a plan to use certain shots. Most of this film used a very fast editing style to give that feel of a fast-paced action scene. The few times I didn't do that was with the opening bench shot. Sometimes what you could do is grab an angle where he looks into the bag, an angle where you see the other guy's reaction, but I felt what would work best for the scene was actually just to have one still shot where we just continue that shot throughout the entire action. It was inspired by one opening scene of an episode of Breaking Bad, where two people are doing a deal, similarly on a bench, where they just went 2 minutes, just having a whole conversation. There wasn't a single cut. I thought that worked best for this shot, and it did turn out very well.
Sometimes we were overly cautious and we swung wide with our hits. That does not look realistic.
When that did happen, I needed to use visual effects to digitally extend their hand. We did the digital arm extensions in the program After Effects, and there were 2 instances in this shot where we had to do it. One was right here, and another was right here. I'll start with this one. We had to get the shot from this to this. We do that first by removing this old arm. We do that by creating what's called a clean plate, where we paint out that arm. This is done by going back a few frames to find a place where nobody's in the way of this shot. So we have this clean area right here, and I drew a mask around that, and then moved it on top of here. Just that still frame, and then moving it on top of his arm, and it makes it completely invisible. Now I need to move Corey's arm from up here to Tyler's face. And I'll do that by taking this still frame right here and drawing a mask around Corey's arm. Jumping back to the completed shot, I now have two pieces of his arm that I can reposition and rotate as I want. Now I can use this and make him go pew, pew, pew. This frame was a lot more complicated. I first had to paint out the fist on his shirt and paint out the background, which I did, once again by going back to the previous frames, finding here's a nice piece of his shirt, and then going over here and repositioning it on top of that. I do likewise for the background. Then for the arms, I had to go back to previous frames to find parts of the arm where it was fully extended. Like over here, for example, I have a good piece of this part of the arm. Then back over here, we had a good example of the forearm. And then I put the two together, and I can reposition them as I want. I also added some fake motion blur on top of it to give it the fast look. And that's how you make Corey's hand look like it's hitting Tyler's face. Another noteworthy visual effects shot is this opening scene on the bench. While it looks like it's visual effects free, there is actually a quote on the bench. "A man never stands as tall as when he kneels to help a child." While that is a very beautiful quote, it just doesn't match the tone of this film. To fix this, we duplicate this layer, so now we have the same video on top of each other. Then we use the mask tool to create a mask where there isn't anything on the bench, and then move that over to where the quote is. Then we fiddle around with this to cover up the entire area. Add some feathering to it to give a little fade on the sides. Then we again duplicate this, cover it more, and voila, no quote. And that concludes today's episode of the behind the scenes of A Day Late. I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, be sure to share it with your friends and subscribe so you can be notified when I make future videos. And we'll see you next time, where we discuss how we did the sound effects of A Day Late.